Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. I was at a national park with my GF and we were resting at a great spot that had amazing views. We were sitting down for a few minutes when a group of about 5 people come up and stop to take pictures. We were about 70 out of the way of the best spot, and I hear, "Let's just wait until these people move." I know she's talking about us, so I scoot back a little to accommodate. No big deal. While standing about 2 feet from us, she just keeps talking about us like we're not even there. Well, if they'd move, we have a much better picture. They want to be rude and inconsiderate to everyone else, and that was the one that got a response out of me. I calmly and simply said, "We're just taking in the views and relaxing." She responds, "This is a great spot for photos, and you're ruining it for people who want their picture here." I told her the trail is out and back and not a loop if they want to take one on the way back, and she tells us we will just wait for you to be done being selfish with the spot. So I tell her to be patient or shut up and move on. I was getting a little upset my rest and views were bothered by this early 50s lady was just so upfront and rude and couldn't even address us. By now there was about 10 people standing around, taking pictures and also watching this lady get pretty heated. I finally stand up and tell her if she asked politely for us to move initially, I would have been more accommodating. But calling us rude and selfish behind our back with us within earshot was not the civil way to handle it. What Karen didn't know was I kept taking glances at her near the end, made the kill shot observation, and as she said, kept talking about us being rude, I said, "Your attitude has been insufferable, and I can guess that's probably why there's no ring on your finger." I really need to thank Reddit as this line was mentioned in an Ask Reddit thread, "What's an insult that doesn't call names or use profanity?" It went perfectly. Her face was as if someone had never stood up to her shit before. You could see it go through her, and the realization forced one move, and all she could do was slump and look down at the ground. One of her friends said that was too far, and maybe they're right, but I ended it with, "All I did was make a logical conclusion based on an obvious observation." The others with and without her were pretty great. A few laughed. One guy said, "Oh, crap." Hopefully this prevents her from being an insufferable C-word to people in the future. I've been gone for some time, but I'm back with a bad one. I've spoken before about how my older brother competed with me needlessly, and he did a lot of beyond stupid crap. Well, he finally pushed the whole family over the edge and got disowned. And I'm going to be explaining a lot of what happened the past year, and then some from before that. But it's too long for one post. Well, going back more than a year. Some may remember my brother getting a free minivan from his ex after the Dodge Ram truck I warned him not to buy became a money pit. I helped him work on that truck and even repaint it. And I helped him remodel his camper trailer too. Why? Because he's my brother? And I guess some part of me deep down kept hoping he'd one day change. But he tried to take credit for things I did, especially with remodeling the camper. And he had tantrums when called out on his lies. He also became temporarily obsessed with my truck, and even implied he'd just take it from me because he hated driving a minivan. He referred to it as a chick car. He acted like a complete child because I refused to trade vehicles, and even got our parents involved. It was just a really stupid and needless situation that my brother tried to make a hill to die on. It started when my brother bought his Dodge Ram, simply because I bought a Toyota Tundra. He had a perfectly running Subaru Baja before that. Then he said he wanted a man's truck and bought the worst, barely running pile he could find that was also overpriced considering the condition. He could have at least aimed for a diesel, since he wanted a Dodge so bad. Lots of dumb crap happened after that, including my brother wanting to LS swap the Ram after destroying its engine and 2 transmissions. But I'm pretty sure the person who offered to do the LS swap for him was a scammer. Not to mention LS swapping any vehicle basically means replacing the ECU. But it never happened anyway since the engine and transmission my brother wanted sold before he could get them. And he had no running vehicle anymore. So my brother's ex, whom he has a young child with, gave him our old 90s Ford Windstar van. It was admittedly an ugly, dent-riddled POS with the rear window busted out. But it still ran and drove surprisingly well, considering that's not one of Ford's better vehicles. And then my brother decided to cut it up into some sort of van truck, or a ute, as they're called in some places. But he made this thing ugly. Lots of spray foam, recycled wood, and rattle can paint. Even mismatched sublights above the cab. He frequently raided the junkyard for parts. And he even glued a Ram badge onto the grill of that van truck. He called it the Mini Ram. Lots of stupid cheap mods done to that vehicle too. Someone once asked me how ugly the Mini Ram was on a scale of 1 to 1,000. And I said about a 667. My brother did a lot of other dumb things in this time, like following me camping just to piss me off. He was a general leech who stole power from my generator and tried to steal beer from my camper fridge repeatedly. He was so brazen as to just walk right in and then tried to pretend to be so drunk he didn't realize what he was doing when caught. I've spoken many times about how he stole booze from me. Until my friends and I revenge pranked him and his near equally Dache friends with a growler full of laxative-tainted beer. We admittedly used way too much laxative, but my brother never stole from me again because I threatened to tell everyone about his humiliation. He crapped on his own shoes squatting in the woods, and that's just a bit of it. Eventually, my brother seemed to learn his lesson. He sold the Mini Ram to someone who actually paid him well for it. And no, I don't know what they did with it, and I don't care. But when the $2,000 he sold the Mini Ram for was combined with his savings, my brother had a bit over $4,500 to buy a better vehicle with. And he spotted a '99 RWD Silverado truck with an extended cab for sale online. He really shouldn't have sold his only method of transportation before having a replacement vehicle ready. But I couldn't fault him for taking the deal when presented, considering what he sold. And as much as my brother annoyed me, I still cared about him enough to help. He showed up begging me to drive him over 60 miles to look at this truck he found on Marketplace. So I reluctantly drove him out to see this truck. It wasn't that bad, actually, save for the rough, mismatched paint, the rusty hood, the dents, the cracked windshield, and actually, I guess it was kind of that bad, but not compared to the clapped-out Ram my brother bought previously. The Silverado had a manual transmission, which we both confirmed shifted great as the record showed it had been rebuilt a few years before. The engine had been swapped at one time too, so it was kind of hard to gauge the odometer as it had not been rolled back for the new engine. It was at about 350,000 miles, but those numbers don't really mean jack when the engine and tranny have been replaced or rebuilt. Admittedly, the engine ran like a top. The tires on the truck were in pretty damn good shape, too, and on steel rims, which I liked. Very practical. I asked my brother if this was the manly kind of truck he'd been looking for. And for once he spoke logically and said that he'd rather have this than risk what happened with the Ram again. Fair enough. Besides, Chevy trucks are cool and reliable. I've always liked them. Like a rock, as they say. My brother and I scrutinized this truck in detail like a pair of pawnbrokers and talked the price down to $3,000. They wanted $4,000, but we could hear a sound while test driving it that was either bad ball joints or wheel bearing. We jacked up the wheels, and the bearings felt and sounded fine. But the ball joints were pretty bad. And that's not a cheap fix unless you can do it yourself. The truck was owned by the seller's father, who'd passed away a year prior. So the guy took $3,000 for it after we listed the problem. After driving it back, I insisted my brother get the truck to a mechanic ASAP. And he listened that time. The mechanic said the ball joints were about to come apart, and it's have caused a very bad situation if they had. And it cost him $1,000 to get them replaced. The truck also needed new plates and the title registered, which ate up a lot of the remaining budget. Then came the paint. My brother wanted the Silverado painted black right away. I told him to wait. But he didn't listen and DIE'd some bodywork and then rattle, canned it with Rust-Oleum turbo can. The paint was full of orange peel and overspray. He didn't even use a primer, and the truck looked kind of mediocre. Then the southern weather had at it. Already numerous chips, scrapes, and fades. Whatever, I stopped caring. You'd think that'd be the end of this part. But no. There's more. What's behind door number 3? If you guessed a dumbass with a knife stuck in his butt, then you'd win the gold. Yeah, that's right. My brother got a knife in his butt. How? How else? He and his friends all got high and decided they were going to go outside and build a fort in the backyard of the house they rent out of scrap they found laying around. My brother, while stoned, wanted to show off how he can flip out a butterfly knife really fast, and decided he was going to act like he was in an action movie, and did some sort of stupid thing where he was running and flipping out the knife really fast. The ground was wet. He slipped and somehow got the knife in his right butt cheek. They called me to come take him to the hospital because they were all too stoned to drive. I had to lay my brother down in the bed of my truck on a mattress because we were too scared to pull the knife out, and I drove him to the hospital like that. They rushed him in, and thankfully he only needed about 5 stitches on his butt and some antibiotics. Then I drove him back home the same way, and he insisted I take him to a drive-thru. He also tried to get me to pay because reasons. I told him to buy his own damn food. Either that there was more dumb bees that I won't bother getting into. But eventually my brother was seemingly getting less bad. He was a bit sore. His Silverado wasn't a Forks 4, and my Tundra is. But being RWD kept him from trying to take it off, roading. He did try once and had to pull the truck out of mud with a come-along. And he didn't try it again. He did want to drag race my truck again, too. I said, hell no. Not going to risk either of our piles breaking down. And he was a complete douche about that, too. I told him to stop acting like his Dia was bigger than it is and act his age. He didn't take that well, but he seemingly really was improving, even being a much better dad to his daughter. Things got pretty good for him, until I decided to buy a house. That's when the serious drama started. Just discovered this sub, and it just reminded me of an entitled asshole parent I encountered this year. To give context, I like old-timers and spent 2 years restoring an old tractor from 1958 as a fun side project. Of course, with lots of new parts, since especially the dashboard was totally broken. But that is not the point, is it? What I try to say is, lots of work went into it to make it seem original, and it was also expensive. Also, I'm a member of the local old-timer tractor club, and part of what we do a lot is show off our vehicles at events and meets. Now, there was a small event, kind of like a fair, that our group was invited to show off our tractors as an attraction, to explain things to those who are interested to know more. We love this, so we of course went with a group of 7. We're driving for about an hour to get there, though. When we arrived, we parked our tractors in the middle of the field per the event organizer's instruction. We just arrived and were chatting about what to do now, so we hadn't hung up a chain or anything yet to prevent people getting on our tractors yet. We also really didn't mind if they did, as long as they were respectful towards our property, which was, to no surprise, not the case. I turned around and immediately a mom sat her kid, maybe 4 years old, on my tractor seat, which is fine by me. What wasn't fine, though, was that the kid's legs were too short to reach the pedals, but perfect length to kick around on the dashboard, ignition, and tractometer, all of which were brand new. Just for reference, the tractor meter is 9-year alone. Of course, walked up to her and, politely with a smile, said, "Excuse me, it would be great if your kid wouldn't kick around on the dashboard." The parts used are brand new and expensive. Her response, "But what is the point of them standing here if they aren't allowed to sit on?" Here I was, scared I said something wrong and wanted to clarify. Don't get me wrong, I don't say anything about people sitting on them. That is fine. It's just, if something breaks, it's expensive to repair. We all put lots of effort into restoring them. That is not nice of you. He's just sitting there. Why is that such a problem? Well, she lifted her kid off the seat. At that point, I was kind of pissed off. That isn't a problem at all. Kicking around on other people's property is a problem. Next time, please ask beforehand. Good day, good day. And she walked off, shaking her head. Afterwards, I immediately tied a chain onto the steering wheel to prevent others climbing on. But it was stunning to see the entitlement of letting her kid do what it wants and not even say sorry or anything. I bet if the meter was broken, they would pretend nothing was wrong. Luckily, nothing happened except some paint scratches. Update. Anyway, this year we were invited once again to the same event, this time with more room for us, and as this could become an annual thing for our club, a few more tractors. Reminded of last year's occurrence with entitled parents that think our classic show tractors are toys and playgrounds for their kids, I thought about what I could do. I ended up with the idea of tying a bright red piece of rope from the steering wheel across the entering point to the rear fender, so you basically need to crawl under it to get on. We hadn't even been there for 10 minutes, and we already had kids climb up on all the tractors, including mine, turning the steering wheel and moving switches. Obviously, I told them nicely to please get off the tractor, and they did, though I also did hear a crack that I had no idea where it came from. While I was tying up a second bright red rope, on the not exactly easily accessible side that I can only assume they climbed up on, a passerby asked for my attention. He showed me a piece of plastic on the ground. Turns out when I sent that kid off my tractor, another one on my dad's tractor right next to mine probably got scared, climbed off, and broke the entire right indicator light off. And instead of telling anyone, just walked away. I ended up finding some leftover pieces of rope from a tent in my trailer and blocked off both of our tractors. But the damage was already done. I drove back home with no indicator as someone turned my indicator switch loose, and I had no way of fixing it. But my dad also wasn't too lucky, considering not only his indicator light cap broke, but the bulb was also gone. I want to clarify, I'm not against letting the kids on our tractors. Neither of us do. We all show them off for a reason, primarily the kids. The problem is when the parents are either careless or not around, and the kids start being rough with some 60-year-old parts, breaking them, and just running off. I personally have no problem letting them sit on mine. If they ask, I will gladly let them. But I find it unbelievable how reckless, careless, and without respect some parents are. Because often, they're around and know. I think this is pure entitlement. They are old, so it's fine, I heard some parents say. In 2013, back when I was working at a movie theater in my town, in a rich, uppy area, right after Wolf of Wall Street came out, it caused problems. Now, working at a movie theater, you can usually just tell after a while what people know what they want, people who think they know what they want, but have no idea what they are getting into. After a lot of refunds for Wolf of Wall Street, and because of a certain inappropriate scene, we were told to warn people exactly what they were getting into. Because we were getting a lot of refunds every show and we were too busy to not keep them waiting a while, so it was my job. So Q, our little old lady, we will call Agnes. Agnes was a little old lady who was a short but large woman with a very short pixie cut. She wore activewear leggings, an overly large t-shirt, and a fanny pack. She waddled over to my ticket booth, fishing her money out of her fanny pack. 1 ticket to Wolf of Wall Street, Agnes stated before yelling loudly. Yes, Agnes, I can tell you need a senior, and yes, she was not the type for this movie. Okay, but just so you know, it's R-rated, I started, but she groaned and rolled her eyes, slapping her hand on the table. Just do your job and give me a ticket. I'm going to be late, Agnes stated. Cue my malicious compliance. 1 senior coming up, I handed her the ticket as she snatched it out of my hand and waddled off to the theater. I waved goodbye. As if on cue, 30 minutes into her entering the theater, she, like most people who have no idea what they're getting into, walks out of the theater. I was about to call my manager with glee for a refund, happy for my subtle revenge, when I realized she had just come out to make a call. All my hopes and dreams crumbled. Maybe I misread her, but she was for sure not the type to enjoy this movie. I sighed in defeat and went back to waiting for movies to get out. That was until not long after her call, 3 police cars with flashing lights pulled up to the front of my theater. I paused in noticeable confusion as 6 police officers came in with their hands on their side pistols. Since I was in a ticket booth, they approached me. Ma'am, we got a call about some illegal films here. The police officer, who we will call Robert, stated. I started in a loud, long, continuous, my eyes slowly drifting to Agnes, who was waddling quickly up to me. Arrest her, Agnes demanded, as I just continued my continuous. And arrest them too. She pointed to the concession workers in loud, noticeable anger. For what reason, ma'am? Robert asked, now seeing how calm and quiet the theater was because the movies were in. For that disgusting, illegal thing of what they were trying to say is a movie, Agnes huffed. She was red in the face and panting. I demand you shut this place down. Were you the one that called about The children engaging in adult activities illegally? Robert asked as completely went dead silent. Child, what? We had nothing remotely like that here or ever. Yes, Agnes stated. That thing in there. That Wolf of Wall Street is illegal. They cannot show that kind of trash in there. Mom, I saw that movie. There is nothing really illegal in it, and there are no children engaging in adult activities illegally in it either. Robert started pretty ticked off. Is this why you called us? Yes, because back in my day, the police would have shut this place down. Agnes was screaming her head off as two of the officers got the hint and just left. Ma'am, do you know what you did is illegal? It is filing a false police report. 911 is for emergencies only. Not for your bad movie reviews. Robert had enough of her at this point. But I didn't file a false police report, Agnes whined as Robert turned to me in a very, very nice tone. Have a great day, ma'am. He beamed with obvious annoyance. They started to file out, and Agnes angrily followed them, yelling to them. Right when Robert was about to exit the door, Agnes grabbed the push bar for the door and yanked it back to keep the door closed to not let him leave, hitting Robert with the door. Yes, if you're wondering, that does count as assaulting an officer. Last I saw, Agnes was escorted to the police cruiser with shiny new arm bracelets. Though, I'm not sure what happened to her. But I never saw Agnes again. I did see Robert, though. He got a free movie on me, but it was busy and I couldn't talk to him to see what happened with our dear friend. But I can tell it was just amazing things. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. I don't know whether this count as a pro-revenge, but here is my story, which happened some years ago. I, 26 female at the time, had just started dating Thomas, 28 male, and things seemed promising. Very sweet man, educated and quite smart, good look. After 7 weeks of dating, he invited me and two of his childhood friends, let's call them Alex and Bart, for a long 29th birthday celebration weekend at his father's country house in a small French town. His father was going to be around as well, and I was very excited to meet everyone. Day 1, Friday, is fun. I am happy to get along well with Thomas's father, a smart and caring man. Day 2, Saturday. After a very nice day, we enjoy a party in the garden with the neighbors, including some friends of Thomas. After a few hours and lots of drinks, a group of people gather around a small campfire and start sharing childhood memories. This is where things go wrong. At first, of course, innocent and dumb stories as you would expect, but then Thomas and his friends started sharing really sick stuff. In particular, they told a story about how when they were 14 or 15 years old, they found very amusing to bully for almost 6 months Arthur, a boy of their school who was very isolated and shy. Making jokes, calling names, you name it. As if this was not enough, they created a fake girl profile on Missing Messenger, a computer platform to exchange live messages that we used in years 2000s, and spent months exchanging messages with him under the false girl identity, flirting and developing a false relationship with the poor boy. Some people were in the confidence at school, and it became a big and cruel joke behind Arthur's back. They used pictures of Bart's real cousin, and the boy truly thought he had some kind of online girlfriend to whom he even sent confessions and love messages. At some point, they got bored and scheduled a false rendezvous, Vu's IRL asking the boy to take a bus for 2 or 3 hours, wearing a t-shirt Elmer, the elephant, based on a private joke. Obviously, there was no one waiting for him, and they did not know how long he waited over there, by himself. If Arthur had not already understood what was going on, he found out the next day at school after Thomas and Bart told the story to everyone, and even shared the love messages that Arthur had been writing. The poor boy stopped coming to class and apparently changed school, and it is easy to imagine that this must have been extremely traumatizing to him. Do you think that Thomas, Alex, and Bart had any bit of shame about it? Not a bit of remorse in particular on Thomas and Bart's side. They kept making jokes about it and even seemed to regret that they were not good enough at being evil to convince the boy to send nudes or sexy pics. I don't even want to imagine what would have happened if he had done so. To say that I felt uncomfortable would be a gross understatement. I was absolutely horrified and started to despise Thomas more than anything. I was not the only one shocked. Thomas's father, who heard the end of the story, had the most disappointed look in the eyes. His stupid son was so drunk that he did not even notice it. I escaped the party immediately after that and got back to the house. I could not sleep at all this night, and I kept thinking about the evening and how Thomas was still finding this funny. I heard him coming to bed around 4 but I pretended I was asleep. Day 3, Sunday, was the actual birthday, and the initial plan was that I would take Thomas on a one fancy surprise date for lunch nearby, and then we would meet the group for a late afternoon party. But instead, I woke up very early on Sunday morning, took all my stuff in silence, and went alone to the train station where I took a direct train heading back to Paris. I decided to send a text to Thomas wishing him happy birthday and telling him to meet me at a certain location 1 hour from the house for a surprise, and that I needed to go a little bit in advance to make sure that everything would be perfect. I had picked the location randomly, using Google Maps, to gain time. Thomas read the text around 10 when he woke up. He responded with excitement that he would follow religiously the instructions. When he arrived there at 12:30, I told him to wait further as there was a little delay on something. Then I asked him to meet me at a restaurant which was 30-minute drive from the initial location. When he arrived at 13:15, I texted him that I was on my way, would arrive in 20 minutes, and that he will understand when he sees me why I made him wait. I also asked him to order some food and the most expensive bottle on the menu. Around 13:30, he started calling me several times and sent a lot of worried texts, and after 45 minutes I responded in French. So, how does it feel to have people play with your feelings? Then I stopped responding. I let him call and text the entire afternoon, but never responded. At some point, an unknown number called me. It was his friend Alex asking what was going on and that Thomas' birthday was completely ruined because of what I did. I just responded, "This is an extremely small payback for what you did to Arthur. Tell Thomas to stop calling me," and hung up. I blocked them. I still felt bad the entire evening as I had started to grow attached to Thomas back then. The following days, a common friend called me to say that my reaction was completely absurd and unfair, that it was not my role to punish someone for actions they did as a teenager, that they were adult ways of saying things, and I had been completely crazy. Only a few people supported what I did. Everyone else seemed to think that I was a bitch. Thomas tried to fix things and win me back for a few months afterwards. I never responded to any of his messages. I don't regret it. I simply hope that Arthur, who should be 35 or 36 years old now, is well. Backstory. I have a 5-year-old daughter with my ex-wife. We broke up about 25 years ago. We had some ups and downs during our marriage. We never argued or fought per se, but we did negotiate a lot with strong emotions and opinions. Yet we always managed to find some common ground to stand on together. That's why it kind of caught me by surprise when she told me she wanted a divorce. I cried for a couple days, went fishing, and then started planning on how to figure things out. Because neither of us had enough income at that point to keep our car and do our house, we agreed that I should take care of selling the car and she would get a realtor to start selling our home. Well, turns out I had to do both. Anyway, we had more debt than money, and she tried to leave all the debt to me while she would start from a clean slate. I wouldn't let her, and I made sure everything we owned and every bit of debt would be split evenly. We agreed that our daughter would live with both of us, splitting the time evenly as our daughter had the right to having 2 parents. We promised each other to act civil. This didn't last long. We also had agreed that since our salaries were pretty even, neither of us would pay child support. We also agreed that she would take care of buying most of the clothes, etc. for our kid, since she would get the child benefit, about 100 euro a month here in Finland, paid by the government to support raising offspring. After the breakup, she started mail ordering new furniture for herself, even before she had found a new apartment for herself. Kinda obvious, but she really didn't have the money for it either. 2 weeks later, she moved out. A week later, I heard from our kid that she had a new man. I didn't really care, just raised some eyebrows. She would often call in sick to her work, usually BS reasons, and when her boss gave some feedback, she didn't fix her attitude, but instead she just quit. She applied to a school and got in. After about 2 months, she quit the school too and started demanding me to pay child support. We got a professional to weigh in and agreed that I still wouldn't pay a dime to her because she herself had caused her income to collapse. As a goodwill act, I offered to pay for our daughter's insurance. I thought the matter was settled, but Then she got pregnant for her new man a few months after our breakup. After our divorce was final, there is a 6 months reconsideration time before the judge calls it. She married her new man. These things empowered her into demanding for money again and again and again. So now that you know what kind of person we're dealing with, the case. Last fall, she yet again demanded money to support our kid. She was working again, and I knew she used our kid as an excuse because she had expressed envy towards my ability to control my finances to a point that even when I had the same amount money, I could eat in restaurants, etc. I told her that if she needed child support for legitimate reasons, I would of course help, but all the expenses would have to be calculated properly to know the right amount she would need. Instead, she demanded I would pay her $200 a month and she would take care of all the expenses regarding our daughter. She didn't have any real reasons for the demand other than her need for control. She had always been someone who wanted to have the last say in things. On top of her demand, this time she threatened to sue me if I didn't pay her. I pretty much laughed at it until I got a message from her lawyer. At that point, I messaged my ex telling her from now on I would only discuss this matter via our lawyers and started looking for a lawyer myself. During the next couple months, things started to look really bad for her case. After getting the papers from the court, I noticed her case was based on false data. She and her lawyer hadn't asked for my income and expenses before they sued me, and she had estimated my income to be a lot more than it actually was. Also, my expenses were estimated to be smaller than actual. At this point, I messaged my ex and asked if she's sure she doesn't want to settle. She didn't, so I decided to go with some malicious compliance and didn't try again. After we both calculated every income and expense of both parties with the help of our lawyers, I and my lawyer confirmed that she had enough money to raise our kid. Not only that, it turned out she actually had more money than me for it, monthly income minus living costs, medicine, etc., etc. I burst out laughing at the absurdity of her case, even more so when she tried to twist things to her favor by sending false evidence to us, and the judge, which we noticed instantly. A couple days go by and my lawyer calls me. She had gotten a call from my ex's lawyer saying he had noticed my ex is lying and the whole case is based on lies, and the lawyer wants to settle. It looked like my MC wouldn't go through until my lawyer got a message that for some reason they won't settle after all. Game on. The judgment. We went to court. The judge was annoyed but composed. He asked my ex's lawyer about their demands. The lawyer started by saying, "First, I'm going to tell a bit of the backstory," and the judge cut him off, telling him to just state the demands. After a few seconds of silence, the lawyer told the judge no demand. The judge was both dumbfounded and livid, asking then why are we here, to which my lawyer said something along the lines of that's what we're asking too. Then the judge asked my ex's lawyer to be clear, "Didn't you want to settle?" And the lawyer sheepishly told the judge that my ex wouldn't agree to settle. They were so embarrassed it was so glorious, like some kind of divine karma being served right at my Karen of an ex. The judge ordered us to go to a meeting room for 20 minutes and to come back with a settlement agreement. Because she had more money, we negotiated that she would pay for our kids' hobbies, insurance, etc. to compensate for the difference. The judge verified it, and my party left the courtroom very happy. My ex, on the other hand, was balancing between being angry and embarrassed. The fallout. A couple weeks ago, my ex demanded that we would make changes to the schedule on how our kid would swap home. I declined, saying we have an agreement. She threatened to sue me, to which I just reminded her about the last time she wanted to get what she wants by suing me, asking if she really wants to do it again. She got mad, and I just ignored it. About a week ago, she sent me a message saying that she had a fight with her husband. Police were called because she attacked him, and she wanted a divorce. The police had to inform Child Protective Services since there were kids present, mine included. Basically, her whole life has gone down the drain. 2 kids to different fathers, 2 divorces before she has even turned 30, a lot of debt and expenses, and looks like our kid will be spending the majority of her time at my place, which is what our kid has wanted for the past 2-ish years. My landlord was a terrible human being. Honestly, calling him a human is even pushing it. Just a few things he has done to me over the past 3 years. Stole my dryer and other household products that are in a common area. Made me pay for a plumbing repair which was deemed normal wear and tear. Tried breaking into my house. Retaliated against me because I went to my lawyer after he sent me a letter about a parking spot. He tried charging me an extra $150 a month. Mind you, I was never late for rent in 3 years, except for when he made me pay for the plumbing repair. So the next month I was a couple days late. The list goes on. Now this apartment was nowhere near nice. I found out the plumbing was illegal. He left me with a porch for years that has severe safety issues. The ceiling paint was always falling down, gas heater was not up to code, and so on. I finally got my chance to leave after he wanted to raise my rent $500 months. He will do anything and everything to get more money out of his tenants. So I called the building inspector 4 days before I left. I told him everything. The porch, when he finally replaced it, didn't have a permit and was definitely not up to code. I told him about the plumbing and the heater. I went on and on. The inspector came over the very next day. I saw him taking measurements. Each violation is a $500 day fine until fixed. I honestly don't know what happened, but my God, did it feel good to finally get him back. He's at the very least on the town radar. A week before I moved out, he tried telling me I needed to be out at a specific time. I never responded, and where I lived, that's not how it worked. He tried to threaten me with the police if I wasn't gone. Well, I went to the police myself that morning to warn them. The landlord did come by, threaten me, and harass me. I called the police. They informed him I was in the right. Long story short, he had broken into my apartment. I had left to go to storage while I was gone. He nailed my door shut. I told the police to get the supervisor because I was over being harassed by this guy. Go figure he left before the supervisor could get there. I'm positive he knew he'd be arrested on site. Got the police report. They're charging him with a felony for breaking and entering. Fines plus a charge. Don't be a jerk to good people. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences, opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.